Hey there, I'm Nick Marchese. Welcome to another Cloud Asta video that I'm calling Take Note, Where to Take Notes in Google. So there's a bunch of different options if you're looking to take notes, whether it's a to-do list, just taking some notes, assigning things to other people. There's a couple of different options and I wanted to share that with you a little bit today. So let's look at our agenda here. So we're going to talk about taking note in a bunch of different things. So we'll start with Gmail. We'll go into Keep, Tasks, and Reminders. We'll touch on Docs, Chat, Jamboard, Sheets. So just by seeing this agenda, you'll notice that there's a lot of different places you could be taking notes in Google, depending on what you want to be doing. So we're going to talk about like the pros and the cons of all the different things and hopefully give you some ideas on how to get started. So let's start with Gmail. So I'm just going to open a tab here to my Gmail. The biggest thing with Gmail is that we don't want to be using it as our to-do list, right? Because then things get lost. It's hard to find them and once stuff gets past this first page, right, it's most likely not going to be touched. So trying to move beyond Gmail as your to-do list, it's a pretty tricky task. We all struggle with it, but that's what we want to be aiming for and striving for. So some of the things within Gmail you can do is using labels. We've talked a little bit about labels in the past, but you can make labels on the side and label things like you would with almost like folders within the messages themselves. You could also use the star feature, and then you could adjust your filters. So, and the star feature has also been boosted, right? So if you want, you could also kind of supercharge that star. So if I star this, I can go up to my settings here, scroll down to my inbox type, and I've got this on default right now, but you can change this to be important ones first, unread first, maybe starred first, so that way I always see my starred things. So if you want to go ahead and use that as your kind of like to-do list, it's, again, not as ideal, but would be a pretty low bar or a low lift to go ahead and change that there for you. I'm going to shift this back to default because that's not what we're focusing on as much today. Okay, so let's move away from Gmail for a second. We'll come back to it, but we're going to move away. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with Keep. Okay, so Keep, I've got it open here, but you could also just go to our little application launcher. I'm going to go, I could scroll down and I could see Keep here. Okay, I'll leave you to it. So Keep's going to bring you to this space where you can essentially just create notes, pretty much the topic of our conversation today, right? So I'm going to start making a note. My note is going to be how to take notes in Google. That's going to be the name of my note. And I'm going to add my first little thing here. Try not to use Gmail as a to-do list. Okay, so I've got this note in Keep. Let me talk through a little bit of the functionalities within Keep. Great thing about Keep is obviously it's cloud-based like everything else, but you could also see it across multiple parts of the Google Workspace environment, and I'll show you where that appears in a moment. But functionality-wise, we have a couple of different options. We could set reminders. We can collaborate, which is a big one with Keep that some of our other things can't do. So you could have a shared Keep note with somebody. You can go ahead and tweak the colors and the themes, depending on what you're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and make it, let's think, there we go. That looks great to me. What's other things I could do? I could add an image in there. I can archive this note when I am done. Other things that are really, really helpful is if I click this More button, we can obviously delete the note as well as archive. We can add a label, similar to how we do labels in Gmail. You can add a drawing, you can make a copy of it, and you can do checkboxes, which is super duper helpful, and I highly recommend. So let me show you what that looks like here. So if I hit show checkboxes, now I've got this checklist, right? So I'm going to move away from using Gmail, find an alternative solution, reflect in a few months. So now I've got this checklist which is really great. And I can sit here and check things off as I go. And my checked off things kind of fall into their own little category here. And I can collaborate with somebody on this, which would be a super duper helpful thing. So those checklists are really great. Remember, those are hiding in this little 3-dot more. And the last thing is you can copy all of this over to a doc. So if you just hit that button, this is a slightly newer button, it'll copy everything over to a doc for you. Last thing kind of here, you can pin notes. So that way, if you've got a lot of them, they'll stay towards the very top. And we can go ahead and hit this little check, and that will select it, and we can do some other things. So maybe you want to mass archive a bunch of them. You can do that as well. Also in here, it's going to show you what reminders you have set up. So if I set up a reminder in here to remind me tomorrow, and now I have my reminders that will show up here as well. And here's where I can edit my labels, I can archive, and so on. So some great pros for Keep is being able to collaborate, setting up some reminders, the checklist, which is really great. The collaboration piece is really super. And you get a sticky type situation, right? And I could also put more images in here and drawings and such. One of the things that I find frustrating about Keep is that there's no rich text editing. So I can't bold things, I can't underline things, I can't change colors. It just gets a little bit restrictive in that sense. Okay, so that's Keep. The great thing about Keep also is if I go back over to Gmail and I go to my side panel here, I've got Keep right here. And then I can see my Keep notes right from within Gmail or right from within Drive. So that's like really helpful to be able to see those notes there pretty easily, especially if you're looking at something in an email or you're looking at you're browsing in your Drive. It's all right there. Okay, enough about Keep for a moment. Let's switch over to Tasks. So Tasks is a standalone or a integrated solution from Google to create more of a checklist situation with tasks. It doesn't have its own standalone place like Keep. It's just integrated into all of the products. If I am in Gmail here, there's this other little blue check here called Tasks. So tasks are really helpful because you could just add tasks, right? Add things for you to do. So you see I've got this overdue task from a long time ago. So I'm going to add a task. Let's just start with one, right? So again, let's go with move away from using Gmail as a to-do list. Okay. And then if I want, I can add some more details in here. Really do it this time. Okay. And then if I want to set up a date, right? I can set up a date for this. I can set a time. I can set it so it's a repeating task. There's a couple different things you could do there. I'll set one up for tomorrow. Okay, I can set it as repeating. I could star my tasks so it's easier to see them. If I go into my more options here, again, you got to click those 3 dots. There's always more things. I could add a subtask, right? So I could add more things within here, which is really cool. Again, just like I did with Keep, right? So find an alternate solution. And I can add a date to that as well if I wanted to. Some other things, I could delete this task. And you can see that it's on my task, the My Tasks list. So if you wanted to, you can also create more lists in tasks. So maybe you have something that's specifically for, professional development. Right? And you want to go ahead and add tasks to this, right? Complete certification, and that's going to be on this list. So now I've got multiple tasks list. I've got the My Tasks things to do, and then I have one that's for professional development. So I've got multiple different places where tasks are living. So tasks are great because they're also quickly integrated into other solutions. So I can see on the sidebar on Gmail, sidebar on Drive, it's right there, and there's a couple different spots. Now let me show you other cool things that tasks can do that are integrated into docs as well as chat. So I'm going to open up one of my documents. So I'm going to open up this how to use technology document. Okay, so I've got a couple of different things. So first off, let me take note. On the bottom, within this doc, I can open up this side panel and I can still see my Keep notes and I can see my tasks within this, which is really great. I don't know if you've been sleeping on that, but the sidebar panel is there within docs themselves. So I have this document here, how to use technology, and I'm going to go ahead and show you my list. This is maybe a proposal for a larger project, and I want to go ahead and start fleshing out the next steps with this. So I'm going to use one of my favorite features, which is the checklist within Docs. And I'm going to say, how to use technology. Turn it off and turn it back on, and make sure it is plugged in. Okay, those are my two really awesome things. So if you haven't been using the checkboxes in Docs, right, they're here. They're really great. You can check these off. They strike through. They're fantastic. But how this relates to tasks is also if you use the checkboxes, you can see now I have this little button that shows up when you're next to any of those, where you can assign as a task. So maybe this first one is not for me, but the second one is, right? So I can even go bring myself in here and say this is for Nick Test. That's just the account that I'm on, and I can hit assign as a task, and it's going to be for me. So Nick Test. I'm going to set it for a date for tomorrow. I'm going to assign it as a task. And now if I bring in my task there, I see I've got this task created. Make sure it is plugged in, assigned to me for tomorrow. And it even links to the document that I'm currently working in. So I can, even if I don't have this doc open, let's go over to Gmail. I'm looking at my task list. I'm like, oh, right, I need to go ahead and complete that step to make sure it's plugged in. But I don't remember the context. I've got this document linked here. I can open it up. I can see, oh, right, this is how to use the technology stuff. And I can go ahead and do it and check it off and be done. And now you see when I checked it off, the little task got checked off here. And now it's in my completed section, which is really fantastic. So they're tied together now within the document and in my task list, which is really powerful, right? So you're bringing together two really powerful features in one. Another spot where tasks are embedded, which I'm kind of really just trying to pitch. Keep is really great for like certain things, especially the collaboration piece, because tasks is really lacking in that collaboration piece. But tasks is really embedded into a lot of other parts. So if I go over to chat, if I'm chatting with somebody here, I'm going to pull up this chat here, and I can look at this super secret recipe message. Right, I can respond, I can reply, I can edit, things like that. But again, 3 dot more, check it out. I can add this to my tasks. Maybe I need to create the super secret recipe. I'm going to add to my tasks. It's going to open out my sidebar. It's going to create that for me. It's going to bring in the link to my chat. I can add more details, and it's done. It's there. So again, chat is automatically tasks are automatically involved in lots of different pieces, which is a really cool thing. Quick note, and if I go over to, maybe I'll go over to calendar as well, right? I love calendar. All right, so, all right, great. I don't want this, right? So I can go ahead and create a new event here, and I can change it and make it a task. Again, and these tasks in calendar are going to be tied to the tasks in my sidebar. If you've had reminders set up in the past, reminders have now merged into tasks. And if you still have some reminders lying around, they will eventually be merged into tasks. Just a heads up. But when you make a task on your calendar, it's going to be added to also that task sidebar. Okay, there's a lot about tasks. So one or two other quick things I wanted to take note on was Jamboard. So like Jamboard is its own thing, right? So if I go over to Drive, I'm going to create new, I'm going to go to more, I'm going to go Jamboard. So Jamboard is this more free-flowing brainstorming idea space. Might not be the place that you necessarily want to be taking notes, but maybe you want to do a little bit more of a think tank kind of brainstorm. So here, right, we have a lot we can do. We can draw, we can add sticky notes, right? Move away from Gmail as a to-do list. I've got this sticky note that I could go ahead and move, and I can rotate, and I can connect it to other things. Maybe I want to go ahead and point an arrow to say go over here. And then I could just have a text box. This is a great idea, right? I could do lots of other things. So this makes it a little bit more visual, might be a little bit more interesting. Not as functional in the checkoff list situation, but if you're looking to, create some more visually appealing ideas here, then definitely check out Jamboard and see like maybe this will be something that you're interested in. And again, I don't think every single note-taking experience has to be with the same product or the same tool. I think each tool has its pros and cons, but keep Jamboard in mind for those as well. Again, Jamboard also really great for collaboration. Just like a doc, you could share it with anybody. And then the last thing I think was on our list here was sheets. So if I go back to Drive and I open up the sheet, right? Oh my goodness, this is great. What a great example that we already basically set up a couple of videos ago. All right, so I've got a couple of different, this is for a project. I've got some sprints set up with start dates and end dates and some details. I even have a status column that I created. Maybe you also want to go ahead and use Sheets as a way to track your to-do lists. Be sure to also create, maybe you're setting up this kind of like project management type dashboard, create a column for, I don't know who, let's see, a user, and in here for, let's say sprint 1, right? This is the first sprint, right? And I'll bring this down here. I didn't start any of these yet, so let's not start these yet. Let's go ahead and you can see, I'm going to show you exactly what I did here. Let's create some drop downs, right, for our users. So we could do a couple of different things here. If I go insert, I can go and do a drop down, right? And I could do it that way. So I can say Nick, I can say not Nick, right? And I can have a couple of different options here for what my drop down looks like. And I can have it that way. Another way it might be really helpful, just giving you some ideas, is to just use the @ and just bring in people in this capacity, because then they'll automatically be assigned to that person. It doesn't give you the option in the same way for doing a drop down in that sense, but this way it's more tied to that user, so it's a little bit easier to kind of keep track of things. Okay, so we've touched on a lot of different ways to take note in Google Workspace. Hopefully this is helpful, keeping in mind all the pros and cons of all the different components. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. This is an ever-evolving ecosystem, but hopefully you'll feel a little bit more inspired to move away from using Gmail as your to-do list. Oh, bonus piece. If I go back to Gmail here, and I am on this email, for instance, right? There's this nice little button up top. Look at this, add to tasks. Now I can automatically add this email to my task list. It links to that email, and that way I can say, please read this over carefully. And I've got this task here. So I forgot about that. There's this nice task button built right into Gmail now to go ahead and make a task even more powerful. Okay, we're done. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Nick Marchese. Have a great night.